Despite the fact that we live in the moment, it's always healthy and wise, and actually quite fascinating, to look at the bigger picture, to see the forest for the trees, to trace the trends, patterns, connect the dots, look at the bird's eye view, and then in turn let that inform the moments and the details. But it's not so easy to do. Because when we live in the moment, we're consumed by it. That's all we see. We have to step back to look at the bigger picture. And then there's always the temptation to fall into the trap of instant gratification. As we enter the year 2025, the end of the first quarter of a century of this new millennium 2000, please join me as we look back in order to look ahead. As we look back at the last quarter century, what has happened, what patterns can we define, and how that informs us as we move into the future. Please join me in this discussion, 2000 to 2025. What have we learned? Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we will be speaking about 2000 to 2025. What have we learned? This program is dedicated by Sandra Schneider in honor of Levi Schneider, and dedicated by Todor Georgiev. May God grant tzedakah and chesed in freeing the hostages unharmed while protecting the holy IDF and all the Jewish people. When we live our lives, the fact is, we live in the moment. The things that are happening immediately right now in your proximity in time and space is what consumes you. And yet, it's critical, healthy, wise, and actually quite fascinating to step back at times and look at the bigger picture. To see the forest for the trees. Because when we do that, we can trace and identify trends, patterns, connect the dots that allow us to see the bigger picture. As we just entered the new year, 2025, let's do exactly that. Let's look back at the last 24 years, the last quarter of a century, and see what kind of patterns we can identify. And the goal, of course, is to help us look ahead. Looking back in order to look ahead, to see where we're headed and what we can do to improve the future. So, when we look at 2000, what are the things that jump out at us? I think one of the first events that happened in the beginning of this millennium, this century, we all can agree, was actually a tragic event. It was on September 11th, 2001. We were just 1 year into the new millennium, new century. The attacks on the World Trade Center, downtown New York City, on the Pentagon, And that became maybe the most defining moment of the early part of this century, on that end of things, which in many ways brought the Middle East to the shores of this world, the New World, the United States of America. On a positive note, 2000, and I don't mean necessarily the day of January 1st, 2000, but that period of time was really the new technologies were taking hold. It was in 1993 when the web was brought to the world. Obviously, it was developed much earlier, but that's when it began to become mainstream. But it would take several years. By 2000, it was beginning to spread. I mean, we didn't yet have broadband for most people, dial-up modems. But technology as we know it now, in the last 25 years, has of course burgeoned, has exploded, with much more to come. Google was, I believe, born just in 1998. YouTube wouldn't be created until 2003. So this is where we were, the infancy of what we'll call modern technology, and how it would revolutionize life, how we communicate, how we access information, the ability to get any piece of information anywhere, anytime. On the personal level, how did it affect us on a personal level? So this may be harder to quantify. I would say that as far as relationships go, and when I say relationships, I mean close relationships, family, marriage, parents and children, that things have not gotten better, and probably a lot worse in the last quarter century. Not that it began a quarter century ago, but a constant erosion of what I like to call the value of the transcendent and the sacred in our personal lives. Commitment, unconditional love, trust. And one could even argue that with the advent and the developments of technology, in many ways, it actually has taken a toll on our personal lives. Because in a way, technology has replaced, at least in our minds for many, real relationships. When's the last time you had a conversation, eye to eye, soul to soul, without any distractions of text or iPhones, smartphones? I often share, years ago, we were going to a wedding, and I was sitting in the back seat with a friend of mine that we were classmates a long time ago. We hadn't seen each other in a while, so I thought a good time to catch up. But he was busy texting. And as much as I tried to get his attention, he kept making like this to me. Soon. I'll be with you in a minute. Wait. So I finally decided to do what? I texted him. Here I am sitting right near him, texting him. I see he looks at his phone, and text, of course, gets his attention. And he looks at me, looks back at his phone, and he's wondering. He said, "Are you texting me? Or is this like a delayed text from..." I said, "Yeah, I'm texting you." He says, "Why are you texting me? You're sitting right near me." I said, "Because I can't get your attention." Just as one of many examples. Girlfriend was telling her friend, one girl was telling her girlfriend, "We broke up." She's talking about her boyfriend. "We speak now, but we don't text." I mean, just examples of the world that has changed in our way we communicate. And technology is an excellent escape. Ask some husbands and wives at night when they go to bed. What are their spouse doing? Very often with their phone, more than with their human partner. So in a odd way, technology are instruments and tools, but do they actually improve the welfare of our lives? I'm not talking about how fast you can get something delivered to your home or the other efficiencies. We know those benefits, but I'm talking about the personal, emotional, psychological, and even spiritual part of our lives. So of course technology can be used for good purposes, but it's one among many questions that arise when we look back at the last quarter century. What about on a global level? Well, I mentioned September 11th, 9/11. So on one hand, as Steven Pinker points out, the trajectory in history has been a constant decline of violence, crime, war, bloodshed. We're talking here relatively speaking. And yet the world is still not at peace. Besides the confrontations that continue on going on in the Middle East, which have only exacerbated and only become more amplified in the last year since October 7th. We also see, especially recently, the fall of many countries are tottering. Canada, the most recent. Before that, we had South Korea, Germany, France. Now, with Trump coming into office, discussions about Panama Canal, about Greenland, about Canada, the fall of Syria just last month. There's no question that things are brewing, and it seems like there'll be a shift, a real paradigm shift, especially in the Middle East. There's so many more items that we can include into this equation. But the point here is not to go through every item. It's really to look at the general picture of the last 24, going into the 25th year of this century. I often think and try to compare it to the previous century. Where were we in 1925? It was between the two world wars. No one knew what was coming. But it was also a time of tremendous transition. There, it was very bloody, the bloodiest century in history. And now, I'm confident, and we definitely all hope that it will not be in that way at all. But we're also going through a transition. If I were to write the headline of the last 25 years, 24 years, I would say disruption. It's an age of disruption. Now, I know disruption sounds somewhat foreboding, but not necessarily. Disruption means shifts, changes. Going back to the internet, going back to technology, it's changed the retail business. How many types of stores simply closed down? The whole music industry, just to use one example. Working online today, especially after COVID. And that should also be included in the disruptions of our last quarter century. So disruption can lead to a much better world, a new era. Yes, it also can be negative. But that's how I would headline it. Take, yes, our new incoming president, President Donald Trump, a disruptor. Whether you like him or you don't like him. Disrupted the Democratic Party, disrupted the Republican Party, disrupted Washington. And now with his talk recently again about all these different unprecedented conversation about Greenland and Canada and Panama and so on. In a positive way, he should get credit for the Abraham Accords under his watch, unprecedented peace agreement between Israel and some of its neighbors, which I see no reason why that won't spread with Saudi Arabia. This is changing. This is history in the making. So it's an age of disruption. And an age of disruption, on one hand, can be disturbing, disorienting, but it also lead us to understand, when you look at the bigger picture, don't think of your immediate comfort zone. Think of where it's leading. The egg is cracking for a new life to emerge. That's how all changes happen. All paradigm shifts, all quantum leaps will always come with that measure of discomfort. When our security blankets and our comfort zones are stripped from us. So it's in technology and everything technology affects, including medicine, including business, and the geopolitical situation, as I just described. So no one knew where September 11th was leading to. New York did rebuild. But the psychological effects have not really been fully explored. I would submit that it brought home the idea, for those that are thinking about it. Many, of course, avoid and want to avoid anything that's uncomfortable. It brought home our understanding of where radical Islam is today. You start comparing it, that radicalism is ready, is ripe for a market correction like Christianity, radical Christianity was, that terrorized the world for centuries. And that's a positive. No one's talking about Islam per se. We're talking about the radicalization of it, the intolerance. I was just reading an article how radical Islam, and many who may not call themselves radical, they see it as sacrilegious. As one of the worst crimes is to tell someone happy holiday of a different religion. Because in their mind, that's like a betrayal of God. So where's the world headed there? We are a big factor of where it's going to head. But I would predict we do what's right, eliminating the radical violent elements, or at least not tolerating it. And creating a peace, yes, there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing, it's not impossible to create a peaceful coexistence of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and any other ism out there. But that requires a type of spiritual wake-up call, a spiritual awakening, where we come to realize that we're all created by one God and all created equal. Diverse, but equal. Technology. So technology, we all understand it's commercial, it's economic, it's standard of living benefits. Tremendous wealth it has generated. As I said, the ease of communication, the delivery of goods. I mean, there's so many different ways. The ability to disseminate knowledge and find information. A complete revolution. But where is it headed? So let's again look at the years and see over the last quarter century. You'll step back. Let's talk about the pros and the cons. The pros, as I said, it's definitely made life easier. The cons, if you don't think of the soul of technology and the soul of the human being, we can get lost. Even more than without technology. Like it always is, junk in, junk out. Something very powerful. If it's not used properly, it can also be powerfully destructive. It can destroy our relationships, where we replace real relationships with friends on Facebook. And where we think a social media interaction is really an intimate connection. AI, which is just beginning to emerge, and it's all from the events that have happened in the last quarter century, poses that challenge in a far more amplified way, because it literally can do what we can do. So where does it leave the human being and the human relationships? So we're at the verge of a revolution in what is the spirit of man. Think of it this way. You go back several hundred years, most of the waking hours of a human being were spent sweating in a field, working to try the agricultural revolution, to try to put together enough food for your family. And maybe you had some surplus to trade it and make a little extra money. Who ruled the world? Monarchs, dictators, despots, individuals. Technology and science in general has made that a lot easier. We don't have to sweat 9 hours in the field. So what have we done with these extra hours? Either generated more wealth, more free time, more leisure, which of course creates a vacuum that is only growing with the acceleration of technology. And what are you doing with that vacuum? So technology has a double-edged sword in that sense. And the same thing on the political fronts. The disruptions in the world are all meant to serve, ultimately, as a wake-up call of the advent of a new era. So I would want to submit the following. As we look back over the last 25 years, what we can take away from, when you look at the bigger picture, not the moments, the bigger picture, is that we're on the verge of a new revolution. After the agricultural, industrial, and some call the next the computer or information revolution, the fourth and final frontier, the spiritual revolution. To discovering who we really are, when you don't have to spend all day toiling in a field or any other menial and mundane labor. Who are you? If you're a machine, machines will be better than you are. The AI machines that we build. You're a soul. You're a spiritual being on a physical journey, not the other way around. What is the purpose of your life? The mission of your life? That is going to become the most valuable commodity. Not fossil fuels. That's something of the Industrial Revolution. We still need it. But that is a means to an end. Not agriculture. And not technology. These are all means. It's going to be the battle over your soul. Who are you? And what is the purpose of your life? The more free time you have, if you don't answer that question, the free time will probably become a noose around your neck. It will erode relationships, values. You'll find all kinds of ways to numb and distract yourself. There's a reason addictions and opioids and so on didn't exist a few hundred years ago. Not just it wasn't available, people didn't have time. As I said, when you work all day in the field, you come home at night, you don't even have time to say, I'm anxious. I need therapy. But today there's a lot of free time. So in a way, the more we accumulate wealth and comforts and prosperity and material possessions and the ease of accessing anything, anywhere, anytime, the more critical it's going to be to find who you are. Now, often people come to that through pain, through loss, through trauma, through death. But here it's coming due to the fact that we have so much time. There's a collective, I would even call it existential misery even. In the Western world for sure. Because some people are not growing up even. They have all these alternatives and these options. Why the need for commitment? Why the need for long-term relationships? Where you can get a quick fix and then move on. But it erodes something inside of us. All of us know we need love. I mean, trust is built on consistency. It's built on commitment. Trust is not built that you were with someone for a day or two or a year or two and then you move on. That actually undermines trust. So the advancements that are taking place are actually a breeding ground for either bigger human problems and social issues, more anxiety, more discomfort, more fear and insecurity, or filling the void by actually discovering who you are, your soul, the spiritual revolution. That's what I take away from these last 25 years. So as we enter the year 2025, and we think about that, we have some direction. We have a guiding light in the sense by looking at the coordinates, the signposts, we can come away with a bigger picture, a GPS if you wish. That's what we need to be doing. There are going to be many more disruptions. Look at the disruptions as the death of an old world order. Maybe death is not the right word, because we could definitely draw from it and salvage and take many of its benefits as we build. But you can say it's looking for the right word, the transition from an old world order into a new world order. And the exciting part is that each of us has a role to play. We're not just bystanders watching it happen. You are an active participant in the unfolding drama of your life and the life of the world. But we need to have clear eyes. We need to be able to look and see that bigger picture. And look at those trends. Because it's so easy to get distracted by the moment. Test it. Right now a text comes into your phone. Right away you're going to look at it and probably respond or try to respond. So you're back in the moment. That's why it's so important to step back and say, okay, where are we headed? And how does that inform tomorrow, the next day? I feel blessed in my work. That's what I do all the time. Obviously, you have to fill the moments and you have to fulfill your obligations and responsibilities and expectations. But most important, to keep your eyes open, because there's so much to come. There's so many new horizons and new possibilities. It's extremely exciting, actually. Now, of course, this does not minimize any of the pain, the loss, the deaths, the hostages. We're far from calling it perfect. But there's so many positive things. And even the negative can be used as a wake-up call to remind us that we need a moral revolution, a spiritual revolution. And that is up to you and I. The next step is yours. The next step is mine. The next step is each one of ours. There's so much more that can be said about this, but I hope I did justice to some extent. Simon Jacobson here, meaningfullife.com. Please check out our offerings. Subscribe to them at meaningfullife.com. Subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. We're right now experimenting and developing, and soon we'll unleash some new AI tools that can help access content that's customized to you individually in any language that you speak. So there's a lot of interesting things coming. Maybe interesting is a mild word, much more than interesting, groundbreaking. I'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments. Please share this with others. And as always, be blessed. It's a great honor to interact, to cross-pollinate, to synergize as we help build a better world, informed by the patterns, by the trends that we've seen up till now. Thank you so much, and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.